Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. This week on Into the LightWeb podcast in the $1 Million Lab series, I have the gorgeous, the enigmatic Kimra Luna. I'm so excited to introduce this guest because this guest was really instrumental in me starting to build my business. She gave away some of the most incredible free content out there, and it was so powerful, and it really gave me my little leg up when I was living on welfare and really struggling to make ends meet. And this little spitfire of a woman literally gave me so much confidence that I could do this. I would look at her and think, well, if she can do this, I can do this. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Kimra Luna. Hello! In today's podcast in the $1 Million Lab series, I am joined by the gorgeous, vivacious Kimra Luna. And I'm so excited to have Kimra on the podcast today because Kimra was very integral in the beginning of my story. And I saw this blue-haired woman and I was like, who is this? And I'm so excited to share her with you. And so I'm going to let Kimra introduce herself and what she does, and then we're going to have some amazing, juicy conversation. I know we will.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here and super excited about this series and this amazing experiment that you are doing. I'm really excited for it. So I'm Kimra Luna. I do two things. I'm a personal branding and online business strategist, and I'm also a certified sex, love, and relationship coach that focuses primarily on supporting people through trauma work. And I have been in the online space for a very long time. And I just love supporting people and helping people, whether it's to grow their business, whether it's to work in their personal life and do healing work. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So I met Kimra back in 2015. Well, it was probably before that because for the first couple of years before 2015, I was kind of studying online business, but I had no money to invest. And this amazing woman put on the most amazing, value-laden free webinars that any person could have attended back then. And that's how I got to kind of know Kimra. And I remember, and we've just talked about that earlier, didn't we, Kimra, that it's so important that actually that we do stuff that is high value, I think, in the free offers that we put out. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, so an interesting story about this. So the first presentation I'd ever done was teaching people how to use Pinterest to grow their business. So I had this vegan mama blog and it had grown to 100,000 unique views a month. Completely organically. I hadn't paid any money on ads. And one of our family friends happened to be an online marketer. And he had asked me just kind of casually, like one day, oh, like, how's your blog going? And I was like, oh, I got 100,000 unique views last month. I was so excited. Like I'd never hit that. And they asked, like, oh, like, did you do Facebook ads? Like, are you doing Google ads? I was like, I don't even know how to do those things. Like, what the hell are you even talking about? And he was like, well, what did you do? I said, I use Pinterest. And he was like, I don't even know what the hell that thing is. Right. And so he said, I want you to teach my community how to use it. And I had never done a presentation before. I didn't even know how to make slides, like, because I'm just not super techie. So I didn't know how to make slides. And so he said, it's okay. Just open up a Word document, write up everything that you want to teach on it. And then you can like screen share. You can actually share your screen, show people what to do and that sort of stuff. So he already had a pretty large audience. So my first presentation I ever did had like 1,000 people on it. Like, and it was terrifying.
No.
I was mortified. Like I was like, oh my God. Like I didn't know who these people were. They didn't know who I was. It was very scary situation. However, I pushed through it. I did it, and I shared as much as I could share. Like, I was like, click here, click this, do this thing. Here's an example of one of my blog posts, and this is how this one went viral. And I just shared everything that I knew, right? And after the presentation, something very interesting happened. I got emails from people. A few of them wanted to work with me. A few of them said, like, oh my gosh, you need to coach me and show me how to do this for my business. So I was like, okay, I guess I got to become a coach, right? Then, because I had no clue what the hell that even meant, I was like, sure, pay me $300. Like, I mean, I had no clue what to do. And then the other group of people emailed me and said that I had gave away too much information. They said, you should have sold that information. And I was like, really taken aback. And I remember talking to my ex-husband about it. And I said, look at what these people said to me. They said that I gave away too much information. And like, I was like, I don't understand what that means. And so I replied back to some of them. And I literally said, I said, well, what do you mean by gave away too much information? And they said, oh, well, you're only supposed to teach people the what. You're not supposed to teach people how to do things. You only do that if they pay you. And I was like, bullshit. Literally, that's what I said to these people. I was like, that's just pure bullshit. I don't believe in that. At this point, I had this vegan mamas Facebook group that I had spent countless hours, I mean, week after week for years before I even had a phone or before I even had a computer. I was just on my phone with this Facebook group that I curated. And all I did was help people, help people, help people, help people. And I knew in those emails that when they said that, it was so lack minded, so scarcity minded, so of this like vulture prey type of
I think a
business
lot of this is
mentality.
very much the old paradigm, isn't it?
Yeah.
The old paradigm of working, and that you can actually be massively generous and still build a thriving business. And I think, and I love that you were already, even though you were not really conscious in the business world at that point as you are now, which is super savvy, but back then you were still, it was already, the new paradigm was already there for you
Mm-hmm.
in wanting to give massive value
It,
up front and things like that.
yeah, it's like those emails just felt so icky. Like I was like, I want to give. Like I know I'm put on this planet to serve people, And so it was just so off-putting. And I think that was one reason why I really became laser focused, because I hadn't made a lot of money. I had made some money with my blog. Like I was getting a lot of views and traffic, and I was selling like Vitamix blenders, and things like that. Cause I was like a vegan blog, so I was like selling Vitamixes and, just like whatever affiliate sort of things that I could do. So I wasn't making a lot of money, but I was growing a lot of traffic, and I had grown a really large Facebook community. So what my friend had said, he had said like, hey, maybe you could teach people how to do that, like how to grow a community and stuff. And I was like, you know what? Like, my ebooks that I made aren't really selling very well. And I had already made a course on how to use Pinterest, but it wasn't selling very well because all of my audience were the wrong audience. They were people that just wanted recipes. So they didn't
Right.
want a
Okay.
course on how to use Pinterest. So of course it didn't work, right? So I ended up shutting down the blog and starting what ended up becoming Freedom Hackers. And that was when I was like, okay, I'm going to teach people everything that's inside my brain. And so then I did this workshop on PicMonkey, because back then like Canva wasn't even out yet. So I did this workshop on PicMonkey, and I ended up getting 1,000 people on my email list in less than 2 weeks from this workshop. And I had done Facebook ads. So I had gotten a credit card, and I said, okay, I'm going to invest a little bit of money. And we didn't even have a credit card. Like I got the credit card just so I can invest in some Facebook ads. And I said, I'm going to spend like $200 and just try it out and see what happens. And if I lose $200, then okay, I just gambled. Some people, buy something for $200 and waste their money all the time anyway. So if I spend $200, it's okay. And I did it, and I ended up getting a lot of leads, and this ended up becoming like my first beginning phases of my community. So just kind of taking that leap out and investing and saying, like, and I remember the video ad. I actually still have the video that was on that ad because I like to watch it to like kind of see like where I came from. And I was so timid and like so shy, and I was like, hi, like, I'm Kimra, like, I'll show you how to make a logo. You know what I mean? Like it was like so like I just did not
You
have
know
the
what I love
confidence.
about that, Kimra, is the evolution and growth that you've allowed yourself to have. Because I think this is something that is very much a mystery in growing an online business and growing, is that you have to kind of just arrived, not there's no evolution and growth. And there's always evolution and growth. And
And
the
a
fact that
lot of it.
you allowed yourself, like I love that you like took the leap and built the plane on the way down as you were falling. You were like, I'm just leaping here. And then you went and took all these opportunities that were given to you, like for instance, doing that Pinterest. And so I joined your Freedom Hackers community. That's how I first found out about you, as Freedom Hackers. And I joined that. You must have been not long after you had done that Pick Monkey training. Not,
Hmm.
not a huge amount, because I remember you mentioning that on the very first webinar that I saw you on. And the webinar was all done on an Evernote. And I was fascinated from that day onwards.
Yeah, because making slides, it takes me a lot of energy. And so, as a mom who had two little kids running around, and I had just found out I was pregnant with my third, I just did everything the easiest way I could do it. Like everyone else had like proper slides and everything had like pretty branding. I hadn't even hired a branding person at this point. And I was just, okay, I'm just going to share it on an Evernote, and then I could give everyone the link, and then they could just put in more notes if while I'm talking if they want to. And I still do that. I actually do it with Google Docs. I just had some master classes. I did like a 5-part masterclass series, and all of the things I just like, oh, here's the Google Doc, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, thank you for the Google Doc. I was just like, oh, like I've been doing that for like 7 years, like that's just the way I am. and
But I
and
think we
it's
need to make it easy. I mean, like, I think we overcomplicate things. I think we think that we need all the bells, we need all the whistles, we need the perfect branding, we need all the things. But actually, one of the things that's always struck me with you is that the most important thing, the star of the show for me when I've been in your audience, has always been the information that you've shared, instead of always like, yes, I've been in your course and things like that, and there's been some really pretty branding there, right? That was outstanding. But also as well, the fact that you're willing to, like, because let's face it, that's the most important bit, isn't it? The information. And I think we can
mhm,
all get sucked into this whole idea that it's got to be perfect, and it's got
mhm,
to be and you've got to have the, oh my god, if you don't have a slide deck, or if you don't, like this, and we put all this pressure on ourselves. But actually, you can start with very little and still make
mhm,
money online, which is how I started, following your example. And so I started online with, very, very little. I had my free Calendly, so somebody could book a free
mhm.
discovery call. And the first time that I booked my, like, a proper paying client, that was the first time that I paid Calendly so that they could also book their one-to-one calls with me. And we built like little by brick, but I was so proud of everything that I built. And it was you, watching you was one of the things that really gave me confidence that I didn't need to be like super slick, super perfect all the time. Like I could grow into
Mhm.
that, because I had watched you in Freedom Hackers like evolve. And then I remember watching like your first, like, I think you were pregnant with your third child, and it was like this, that launch was just like phenomenal. I mean, that was, and it was so exciting being in the audience watching that launch. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that launch, because it was actually hilarious. Because, yeah, well, not for you, because you were really sick as well with the
Yeah,
pregnancy.
I was very nauseated that launch. So it was like February. So, and I had my son in April. So it was about 2 months before he was born, but I was very ill the whole pregnancy. It wasn't a good pregnancy at all. I had injured my hip during the pregnancy. I was basically bedridden almost the whole pregnancy because I couldn't even go to the kitchen. Like I would just be sick. Like I just couldn't. I had to hire a chef to like come and like bring me food. Like it was just so bad. And so I definitely had a really rough pregnancy, but what I did is I was like, I know I want to launch this thing. I was also very inspired because I really wanted a nanny. So that kept me a little bit motivated because I was like, if I pull this launch off, I can really, really do this. And so what happened before that launch though is I had gone to a 2-day mastermind like workshop with someone who was like a top leader in the industry and was like, oh, well, this is going to help me do the launch. Well, I actually did everything the opposite of that person. Like they told me all the like I still have the Evernote that has all of the notes from it. And I was like, I didn't do any of that. Like I did like completely opposite. They wanted me to like script all these videos and like, do like the 3-part video series, which was like the
Right, yeah.
fancy smancy launch model at the time. And I'm like, I don't want to script any videos. Like I'm feeling uncomfortable with my body because I'm pregnant. I'm nauseated and like gagging all day long. Like, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to host a bunch of webinars like I've always been doing. And I'm already known for doing webinars. I'm just going to keep doing that. And it's going to be great. So I did like 5 or 6 webinars during this launch. And one thing that I did do because because I couldn't figure out how to showcase to people what I did. Right. And so what I did is I hosted a free women's event at my home. And so I invited a bunch of women locally to come to my home. We were going to do like a mastermind. We are going to do coaching with them, showcase some of their businesses. And I had a videographer come in and film this so they could see me teaching, right? Because it's difficult to kind of showcase that of like, oh, I screen share, like what, like it was difficult to showcase that.
It's
So
not
I
such an
brought
exciting video if it's just you screen sharing.
yeah, like I was just like, what? And then I of course wanted to show my family and show my kids. And so we made like this little brand video. It was like a minute and a half long. And that was something where I was like, like I'm going to share this on ads and just showcase who I am to people. Like it wasn't even selling anything in the video. It was just like, this is who Kimra is. This is what she's about. This is what she cares about. These are her values. I did talk in the video like really heavily about how I really believed in like being generous and like supporting people, and like that's what my community was about. And so I did share that in the video, and that video went viral during the launch. We ended up having over 1 million views of that video during the launch
I
because
remember
people
that
were like,
video. It was hugely inspiring.
yeah, they were like, who's this pregnant lady with the blue hair? Like people were just like, what is going on? And then that just led people into, checking out my webinar presentations of like, hey, like I'm going to help you for free. Come and check out my webinars. And so I hosted these webinars. I did the launch. We ended up doing $780,000 in that launch. And at this time, I did not have a team. I had like one very, very part-time virtual assistant. It was just me. So then that's when I ended up hiring Akila Pitts, who ended up being on my team for like 5
Right,
years.
yeah.
And so I hired Akila and I was like, I need help. Like we have like 400 new students, like we gotta like work. And my baby was about to pop out, so I'm just like, this baby's coming any day now, so it's like, we gotta hustle and get some work done. So then I started bringing on team and things like that. But it was a massive launch. And the thing is, I was just being myself. I really wasn't following like the fancy funnels. I mean, I was writing emails the morning of, like I didn't plan out the emails ahead of time. Like I was just like, what am I inspired to write about?
Yeah.
Like it didn't really
But I
matter
think
to me.
as a person who was in your audience at that time, it really came across that everything was coming from the heart. I think that was one of the biggest things. Like everything felt so real, everything felt so raw. And I mean, this is something that I teach my students, is that people will smell bullshit from 20 paces. They will, the slick funnel isn't always the best option because it can feel so fake to someone.
Mm-hmm.
That actually it was that realness that I connected with so much. And I loved your story. I loved the fact that, that it wasn't always polished and it wasn't always perfect, but it was always from the heart. And I think that was one of the key ingredients, was that and I was massively inspired by that, because at the time I was still in recovery from multiple organ failure. I was trying to kind of climb my way back up to something. I had been, a six-figure business earner before, but I was nowhere near that at that point in time. And it was just, I mean, I remember when I heard your final numbers, and that was something else as well, because at that time a lot of people didn't share their numbers. It was just like, yeah, I'm super successful. And then that was that. And like you actually
Mm.
shared real numbers. And I remember like my jaw like hitting the floor. And it was like $780,000 launch. And I was like,
Mhm.
and it
And
was
I
so
hosted a
big.
webinar afterwards that broke all of it down.
Yeah.
Like I showcased like this is how much we paid ourselves, this is how much we paid our team, this is how much we spent on ads. This is like I broke down every single element of it, and a lot of people they don't do that. They'll do a launch and then they don't want to tell people that 90% of the
That's big
money went
mystery.
they went to team and marketing, you know. So I'm like, so you actually only made like $10,000. You didn't make 100,000, you know, like that actually happens in our industry sometimes. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to be very transparent with people and show them like this is how you can build up. And I've done that with all of my launches where I will break down like what happened, like what worked, what didn't work, you know, like, oh, we tried this thing. I mean, one of my launches, the Facebook ads wouldn't go out. Like, and so I had to email my list like double the amount of what I normally would have because the ads just would not push out. Like Facebook was just denying all of my ads and we could not figure out why. And it took almost a week into the launch before we could get the ads going. And that was rough because I know that we definitely missed out on sales because of that. And so that was really rough. And I ended up like having to keep the cart of the program open a little longer so that we could kind of try to make up for some of that loss. But that was really rough to like, because you never know when tech is going to break or something's not going to work. And so so there's definitely been lots of ups and downs with launches throughout the years, lots of mistakes that we made, lots of lessons that I had to learn through launching. But I've never done my launches the typical way. And even now, like after we had already done multiple seven figures, I decided, well, I want to have like, you know, the fancy funnels. We did the fancy funnels. I mean, it was like months and months and months of work, all this sort of stuff. None of it worked. None of it, like zero sales
I,
from
I
these funnels.
went I went down that rabbit hole. I didn't go super far down that rabbit hole, but I went down the rabbit hole and I had convinced myself and I needed all this kind of things. But actually, it just got to this place where it just sucked the fun out of ice cream. And I was like, oh, and I was so over it. And I was like, no, I come back to the ease, joy, and flow of my life instead.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was so yeah, but I love that you've always like been very transparent, and that's inspired me to be very transparent with my audience as well, because I, realized in my first lot of businesses, I wasn't very transparent. People would say, oh, like I was in the clothing industry and I had a cafe and things like that. And people would be like, oh, how's it going? I'd be like, fine, but 10 minutes earlier, I'd been bawling my eyes out, wondering how I'm going to pay my staff, So it was like, and I really, really did not want to be a repeat of that. So I wanted to be real. I wanted to be honest, not only from my own relationship with myself, but with my relationship with everybody else as well. I didn't want to live the sort of, when things were bad and like pretend that they were great, which is what I did when I had my first businesses. And that was pure, I operated completely from fear because I was fearful that nobody would want to buy things from
Mm-hmm.
me if I was if I was basically not seen as being switched on and successful 24/7, that I was maybe having a rough day. And so
Mm-hmm.
seeing you being really transparent really lit a fire under me to really, model that as well for myself. And it's one of the things that my students and clients are always commenting on, is the fact that I am willing to include people in my evolution. I'm willing to include people in the messy bits and the bits that are not always so pretty. And that there's no amount of Instagram filters gonna like fix. And I think that's been really inspiring. One of the things that you have done that has really inspired me in your journey is that when I had my business, my shops, I grew them, and then I said nothing for 2 years, and it was a major, major factor in my burnout. Huge factor in my burnout. I wouldn't even admit it to myself that I had outgrown the shops, and eventually I had to. Like after my burnout, I had to admit that I had outgrown that business. You know, and so one of the things I really admire about you is that even though you've built this multiple seven-figure business, you were rocking it, um, there was something missing inside you, and you decided to do something massively courageous, which was to pivot. Tell us a little bit about that journey, because that I find fascinating, because that takes big lady balls to do that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So yeah, Be True Brand You is selling really well. Things were always going really great with every launch, and I could have just continued like on that path. And I was having a lot of personal transformation. I finally let go of my marriage, and that was a huge, huge, huge deal for me because I didn't have what would be considered like a bad marriage, so to speak. Like we get along just fine. I mean, like we have the same beliefs about parenting, like we got along. And the fact that I had let go of that relationship rather than living another 30, 40 years of my life in it, was a really big deal. And so I was going through an immense amount of grieving. I was going through just a lot of things all at once. And so I had kind of like this big spiritual jump, so to speak. It was kind of like things boiled up, and then it just like it's like the jump had to happen. And so and then at that point I had different like coaches who supported me like with relationship stuff, with healing stuff, and things like that. And that really inspired me to go even deeper into doing healing work. And I always have been a healer. I actually had a previous business that was around healing and energy work several
Yeah.
years in the past. And I'd always been that way. And actually, my first money I made online was doing tarot card readings. So I've always like, this has always been part of me, but it was different of like putting it in the forefront. Like it was like weird to say publicly, oh yeah, I'm a witch, and I'm going to share things that my ancestors are telling me, and I had actually made a post because I had done like a full moon, kind of like little ceremony for myself. And my ancestors had told me that productivity upholds the patriarchy, upholds white supremacy, upholds like all of the isms that are causing harm to our society, and that I'm not here to be consumed. And I was like,
Mm.
dang, like this is a powerful message. Like I gotta post this, right? And normally I wouldn't necessarily post things like that. I'm like posting business tips, or whatever, like
Or
here's how to like,
productivity tips.
yeah.
Well,
So
that
I'm
was
like,
like a huge
okay,
gift, right?
exactly. So it was like, yeah, like here's how to be more productive in your business. No, but here's what's actually happening, like, and so this like need to be productive, this need to be consumed and be like this worker bee,
That's
like
the
that
kind
sort of
of
stuff.
hustle, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just no. And so I made a post about it, and that post ended up going viral. I had over 1,000 shares on my Instagram post, which wasn't something that was common for me. I would get like a few shares here and there, but it kind of went viral. And I was like, okay, this is what my audience really wants. They kind of want this blend of these other pieces of Kimra mixed into business and marketing, and like how to decolonize their marketing and make sure their marketing is inclusive, and they want those pieces of me. And I did scare away a lot of people when of course when I came out of the closet. That was definitely a thing that a lot of people left my email list when I did that. And it was just, I was like, I have to share. I can just be hiding this forever, like, and so I had to share. And then of course there was a lot of stuff, particularly here in the States, with like political things. And so I'm sharing a lot more of that, which I would share those things, but I was kind of like more quiet about it, like
Yeah.
gently sharing them. And then things just kind of like amplified. And I was like, I can't hold back anymore. And, I was the one out there at all the protests and all the things and stuff. And so, and I'm like live streaming that and like posting videos. And people are like, what are you doing? And so I just had to let these things out of me. I couldn't contain them anymore. And so the pivot, it definitely has been scary to transition into something new. But there was also other legal reasons why I couldn't continue doing it. Because of my divorce, the intellectual property of Be True Brand You was owned by my ex-husband and me because of the marriage. And so therefore I could no longer sell that content anymore. Any content I had created was intellectual property of the business, and the business was owned by myself and my now ex-husband. And so I literally had to stop selling. And so I was like, okay, well, what the hell do I do? So I started doing one-on-one coaching. I started doing like behind the scenes stuff, like building people's, launches and things like that. Because apparently, like with the divorce, the ex can't take money from like the one-on-one work sort of stuff. So it was like a way for me to kind of get around that. But while I was doing it, I was working on my certifications and my spirituality and all these other things. And now it's kind of like I still do my business and branding stuff, but it's now incorporating like sensuality and like regulating your nervous system and like how to launch without having panic attacks. And like, because that's what was happening to me in the middle of launches with panic attacks, because I didn't have anybody that taught me like, you need to regulate your nervous system, Kimra. Like there's a lot of capacity having to open when you're bringing all these people in, and people weren't talking about capacity work. Now there are some people that are talking about it. Lisa Fabriga is doing a great job talking about this now. And so people weren't talking about capacity work. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize that growing so big and so rapidly was stretching my capacity, but farther than what my nervous system was able to
Take,
handle.
yeah.
And so now I'm teaching this with my coaching, with my clients, so that they are able to do, yes, it's a slow and steady wins the race sort of model, but it's something that is going to allow it to be stable. And if people can have a stable business, to me that's more important than having a rapid growing business that's skyrocketing to the moon.
I love, love, love that you talked about a stable business, because this is one of my little bees in my bonnet, is that there's so many people on the ground floor looking for the lift all the time. And then and I've been slow and steadily climbing the stairs, and I'm still looking down, and I'll see them still looking for the freaking lift, like the easy option, the easy option, the easy option. And they're looking for the quantum leap and the quantum leap and the quantum leap. And while I've been climbing the stairs, but in the climbing of the stairs, I've gained like a massive momentum. So now we go up the stairs quite quickly. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
there's still these people at the ground floor looking for the thing. But actually, if you stop them and you grabbed hold of their shoulders a little bit and just stop looking for this lift for a second, are you actually ready and set up to handle 1,500 people to come into your business like that? Most people would be no. They would
Mm-hmm.
they would move so out of alignment so quickly if so many people came into their business. Like it wouldn't be a fun thing. It would, in their minds, it might be like, oh, it'd be so fun if like 1,500 people bought my thing. But then when they actually think of the logistics of that, it would be like, oh, and it would like completely deflate their energy,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they don't have the capacity to hold it.
Yeah.
And
And
yet so
in
many people are looking for that instant hit of, hundreds or thousands of people to come into the business, when actually you're right, slow and steady, and it builds the capacity as
mm-hmm.
you're moving up. And it's like forward momentum is forward momentum. And I love,
Yeah.
and the thing is, you can still grow rapidly because you had really rapid growth in your business, and I've had, I think, in 5 years, amazing rapid growth in 5 years. And it's still, but I've not been on the ground floor looking for the lift and the easy option. I've just been, like, when there was 10 clients, I was like, woohoo. And then when I got to like 100, I was like, wow. And it was just building a little bit each time. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, and people don't recognize that. They just see like these like fancy, flashy things that are going on in our industry. And I mean, those things irritate me because I see people coming to me who have tried those things and all of them have failed for them. And so, but then when we go back down to like the nitty gritty of it, it's like, okay, what are your core values? What do you actually believe in? Like, why are you actually doing this? And oftentimes they're like, well, I don't know why. And I'm like, well, if you haven't even you literally don't even have the foundational thing to grow a business, but you're wanting to be all the way on the moon already. Like it doesn't happen that fast. Like you have to have these foundational pieces. It's like you have to build your house on something really steady. It has to have a strong foundation. And everyone thinks like, oh, it's okay, I just jump on the rocket ship and go straight to the top. And it doesn't work that way. And even if it does, those people crash and burn. Like you'll see people do that in the industry
I've seen it.
where they will
It
have a
breaks my heart.
business and it's huge and it's growing really fast and you see them all over the place and then they disappear off the face of the planet.
Yeah,
You're like,
they're like, where have they gone? And they're like nowhere to be found. And it breaks my heart because they've built their businesses in such an unaligned way. There's no stable foundation. It is all go, 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 hustle, 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 24/7. And then, they get to this point where they're like,
just
they
burn
have
out.
the burnout or the breakdown of like where they're practically staring into their own palm, like, what's it all about?
Mm-hmm.
And that's rough. That's rough to
Mm-hmm.
hear,
And
and my
it's
heart breaks
and
when
it's now my mission to help people not go through that, right? Like that's
yeah,
now like become so crucial for me because even when I was growing super rapidly, I did still need more support. More of the emotional, spiritual, mental support was what I needed, right?
yeah,
I thought like, oh, I just have some more VAs and I have a project manager and like that's going to be the thing that really helps me, which yes, that absolutely lifted a lot of stress off my shoulders. That's definitely true, but I did need more deeper support. And I now recognize the importance of that deeper support. And I was always going to therapy the whole time and things like that, but I still needed even more than that. When you're growing
you
at
have a
such a big,
healing team now.
huh?
Have you built like around you like a healing team now? Is that something that you built around?
Yeah, I currently have a therapist. I do most of my healing work myself. I do practice a lot of somatic work. I mean, I'm the person that has like the piles of like all the somatic books with all the processes and all of the, all of the trauma work and stuff like that. So I do a lot of the work on myself. And now I feel much better doing a lot of the work on myself because that helps me be able to do that work on my client so I can see like what's really working for me. And then it's like, okay, let's try this for you. And so I like doing a lot of the work myself. I've kind of just always been that way. I don't like having coaches all the time because I feel then I'm not trusting my intuition as strongly, but I do have a very heightened intuition. So I don't recommend people not having coaches or mentors. Like I do think they're really important. I just happen to be someone where even if I have them, I don't listen to anything they say. So I'm like the one that's like, oh, I'll just do the opposite of what you said
You've
type
got
of
a
person.
very strong maverick archetype
Yeah.
where
Well,
you
in
love to push
my
people.
human design, oh my gosh, like my human design, like I don't know if anybody hears all about human design, but my human design is very fixed. So it's kind of like it doesn't matter what the outside things do. I'm laser focused and it just goes that way. It like nothing else can move me off my path, like at all. Like it's just like not possible based on my human design. So I'm definitely like I don't know, it's just how I am. Like I don't know. But some people they do need more of that guidance. And that's why understanding our personality types, understanding things. Oh, Sirius, can you go out there, please? I'm on a podcast right now. See you later. He's so cute. He's so cute. And he's 5, but he's also autistic, so he doesn't really understand when you say, "Oh, I'm doing a podcast." He's just like, "What? That means I should just come in, right?" So he's so cute. But anyways, like it's like I know for myself and just my own personality type that even when I have mentors and guides, I tend to just like I don't even end up asking them questions. Like I'll pay them and then I get on a coaching call and I don't even have anything to ask. Like I'm like that person because I'm just like no, like I'm going to focus on what my guides tell me, what my body's telling me that day. Like I use my body a lot to help make decisions. Like okay, like what does my gut say about this? Like cuz if I'm having really bad gut things and my stomach is rumbling, like something is off, and it's not because of something I ate, like it's like
Okay.
something
No,
is
I love that because that's one of the things that we've been covering in the experiment is we've been talking about intuition, we've been talking about listening to the body. Does it feel light? Does it feel heavy? We talking about tapping back into that guidance system. So it's great to hear that you're using that so much, and that's a big part of how you make decisions and how you come to conclusions in the running of your business.
And I
And
didn't even realize I was doing it in the early stages. Like it was kind of like just something that happened that I was doing naturally, but now I'm much more conscious of it, which has made it so I'm even doing even better decisions. Like all of 2020, I was having a lot of confusion on like what direction to go because it was hard to tap into my own body because of like the global trauma that was happening. And it was like I'm so tuned into this collective trauma too, and so I was having a hard time like knowing which way to go. Like I was like, oh my god, like I'm confused. I was like, I've never been confused like this in my life. Like what is like I just couldn't make decisions. And so I really had to start doing like really deep somatic work, really focusing on my body and how I was feeling, because I'm like, the body is what has the wisdom. That's why we are in these vessels, because this body has wisdom. And so that has been like, especially for me, like this past, particularly all of 2020, I've had a severe nausea. I actually had to start taking anti-nausea medications because my nausea was so bad I couldn't even eat. And so that, which was something that I was just like, oh my gosh, like now I'm on these medications and all these things, and it now I'm finally able to get off of them. Now I don't have the nausea as bad, but it was really a rough year just on my body because I was so used to tuning into it. And then all of a sudden, because of all these worldly traumas that were happening, it made it very difficult for me to tune
yeah,
into it. And
it's
so
like
I had,
um,
yeah.
the empath was really like getting battered in 2020 for a lot of people, I feel. And obviously you are. So I say that empaths have what I call a super receiver. So they're basically able to pick up the signals of others in the universe really, really well because they're receiving it in. Like it's like their receiver is amplified to receive
Hmm.
signals. So you just got like you got like the volume turned up high, like
Yeah, so high that I was,
broken, you know?
yeah, I mean, it was so high that I was nauseated constantly. Like it was like causing physical things in my body.
Yeah.
And I've finally, it took me almost the whole year to get my body back to where it was no longer being taken
Manageable.
over
Yeah.
by that other energy. And I'm glad I have it back now, because now I'm feeling really good and I'm all like pumped up and all excited, and depression has really been lifted off of me, and I'm feeling much better. And that's good because I know there's all these people that I really want to serve and support in 2021. And yeah, it was just, 2020 was just such a bizarre year for me when it came to, knowing directions or what actions to take, where to go. It was really difficult for me, especially because I've always focused so much on my intuition and my body, because I've had people ask me like, how did you grow your business? I was like, my intuition, like I don't know, like I mean, I really don't have like a step by step strategy of how I grew. I know what I did and what worked for me, but it wasn't necessarily like strategic, so to speak. It's kind of like, oh, this feels really great, I'm going to try this out, you
But I
know?
love that, because let's pause on that for a little minute, because I think that's something that this is something that really, this is another thing that bugs me in this business world. There's a lot that bugs me in the business world, but it is that people blindly follow these strategies, even when it feels like ick in their bodies, right? And
Mhm.
here's you talking about growing this, 7-figure business using what feels good in your body. And that's how I've grown my business, by feeling into the energy, what feels good to me, and like that. And I'm often famous for saying to my students, like, there is no, like, if the feeling is not good, it's void energy, nothing grows in the void.
Mhm.
know? But if you're willing to like follow the good feelings, then you're near the field of infinite possibilities, and the better you feel, the closer you are to the well of infinite possibilities, and the more possibilities you're opening up for yourself. And I love that you have had this awareness that you've used. And that for me, like you're saying, I don't know, there's no strategy, but that for me is the strategy.
Yeah.
Is the strategy to follow what feels good in your energy system, because your energy system already knows how it's going to pan out.
Mhm.
Whereas when we try and force ourselves to fit into the funnel, to fit into the strategy, then what we end up with is we end up with this, like, what I call janky energy that's just
Mhm.
yuck. And
Yeah.
then we wonder why it's not working, and we wonder, and then we get into the loop of frustration. But actually, if you just followed the energy that felt amazing in the first place, and the things that make your heart sing, and you taught those things, it's like a recipe for success.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time there's a million ways to make $1 million because there's no right specific exact way. I mean, you can listen to people's stories and like learn from their lessons and try things and dabble with things, but there really is no exact right way to do it. Like when and the thing that's interesting is a lot of the top leaders in the industry, they'll stalk my launches. Like they'll get on my email list, they'll have their team buy my programs, they'll they do all these things to try to figure out what the heck it is that I'm doing, and I can tell that they're trying to do this, and it makes me laugh because I'm just like, there's no way you can replicate this. Like it's like impossible because I do it in my own way. And like even now, like I've started using Twitch to host my workshops and master classes, and there's not very many people that are currently doing that. And then people are like asking me all these questions, like, what's the strategy behind this? I was like, I'm a nerd and I like Twitch. Like, I mean, like, I don't really have a particular thing. I have no clue if this is going to work out and be like the most amazing thing for me.
But it's still
I've been
driven
wanting
more.
to be on Twitch for 5 years, but I held back because I was like, well, there's not business owners on there. But now when I think about it, I'm like, dang, I should have just listened to my gut then, because then I would have this huge, gigantic platform on there now. Right. And so I'm just doing it because I want to do it. And someone had said, oh, like Kimra recommended it. And like they had said something on Twitter about it. And I replied back, I said, I didn't recommend it. I just said I'm using it. If you use it and it works for you, that's fabulous. But I haven't recommended it because I have no clue or no proof that this is something that's working really well for me. Yes, I have made sales from it, and that's new and starting to happen, but that doesn't mean that's always going to be happening, and it doesn't mean that's going to be a long-term thing. So I said, when you're listening to somebody who's maybe like a mentor or these quote unquote gurus, you have to decipher yourself what works best for you. Just like I was literally told, you need to do this script, you need to do this 3-part video series, you need to have all these multiple funnels going like crazy throughout your launches. I just emailed every single person on the list the same freaking email. Like I was just like, whatever, like if it resonates with them, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't, like I just couldn't do my launches that way. It was too complicated. My brain doesn't work that way. I'm a creative. That's period. I'm a creative. I'm a creative. I'm a creator. That's all I do. And doing all of these other things, my brain doesn't work that way.
I think our
However, I
community has
have,
a lot of creatives in it, and our
yeah.
brains don't work that way.
And I
And
have tons of friends who their brains work great that way, and they have all those analytics and all those stats and all of those sorts of things. And I'm just like, what are even like a spreadsheet? Like if my team showed me a spreadsheet, we used to have this joke that if you showed Kimra a spreadsheet, you'd be fired, which wasn't true. It was kind of like a joke though, because I can't even look at it. Like my brain just turns off, like completely shuts down. And so I'm like, I can't look at those big spreadsheets. I can't look at long checklists. Like it's just not how I work or function. And I think everybody feels like they have to build a business how everybody else does, but we are all different beings. We have different energy, we have different capacity levels. Like if you are going through a big major amount of grief, you probably shouldn't have a bunch of one-on-one clients. Like I personally do not have the capacity for lots of one-on-one clients. I can take one, maybe two at a time. I don't take very much because I do give so much into them, and my brain is constantly thinking about how I can best help them and serve them. So I don't have the capacity to take on a lot of people. But what I do have is the capacity to teach in group settings. And I really enjoy teaching in group settings. And that's something I love. But I have another friend where her whole business is just one-on-one work, and she loves it and thrives in it. So we have to find what works best for us. We are individual human beings. We are individual business owners, and we have personality traits that are certain things. We might have disabilities that are also to take into consideration as well. Like I had a client who had fibromyalgia, and it was literally impossible for her to do one-on-one work. Like she's like, I don't know if I have my client booked, if that day I'm going to wake up in a lot of pain, or I'm going to wake up on a good day where I can actually coach. And so what we ended up doing was creating all her content digital on the days that she was feeling good. So on the days that she was feeling good, she'd ping me in the morning. Okay, I'm feeling really good today. What can we do today? And then we would work on her content, get her course created, and that sort of stuff. So we ended up getting the whole course created, and then she was able to build her brand literally from sitting in her bed posting on Instagram, because
Amazing.
some days she just couldn't get out of bed. And so every person is very different. We have different circumstances that are going on with us. And so you have to build your business in a way that works for your lifestyle, for what you are looking to do in the world, for
Absolutely.
your
Agree
mission, for
100%.
your values. Like there's so many of these pieces that go into it. So that's why there's no one exact way to do it. And I love helping my clients build their businesses that are authentic to them, right? Like I ask them, do you have the capacity for more one-on-one? And if the answer is no, and we don't want to do that, okay, what are some of the other routes that we can go? Can you, and like one of my clients, she has a podcast that is super successful, but she never even thought to get sponsors for the podcast. And she was able to make a full-time income just from the sponsors. That didn't
Amazing.
even count the other work that she was doing with like some of her group programs and courses and things she was selling. But I was like, your podcast has so much momentum. How can we make this into something and something that feels authentic? And so she got sponsors that were really aligned with her brand. People that I was like, well, what are some of your favorite brands? Like ones that you really love, ones that have values that are aligned. And we pitched them and reached out to them, and she was able to land them. Now she makes a podcast episode, boom, there's another $1,000 in her bank account.
Amazing. Amazing. That's how you do it, isn't it? And this is a big principle behind the experiment is ease, joy, and flow. And that's what happens when we align, when we're true to ourselves and we really align with ourselves, then we can align with the outer world. But the mismatch energy starts in us when we're not aligned with ourselves, when we're not even being honest with ourselves. Or what are our values? What are those deep foundational pieces that are so important?
Hmm. And
So
it's like, who are we? You know,
right,
it's like
exactly.
it goes even deep. It goes so deep. It's like, who really even are we? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm the punk rock chick. Like, I'm super witchy. Like, I love roller skating. You know, like, what really am I? You know, like, what are these pieces of me that aren't showcased out into the world? And how can I begin showcasing those things, even if it's a fun thing? I think a lot of people, they take business so seriously. I'm like, what fun can you add into this business?
Mm.
Right. And like you were saying earlier, that your $1 million, experiment is something that's been so fun for you in your
Oh my
business.
God,
And
it's
I'm like,
so fun.
yes, let's do fun. Like, what can we incorporate in? And I'm actually a super serious person. I'm not like most people think, oh, you got like the blue hair, like you must be like all super fun and like all spontaneous and all that sort of stuff. No, I'm not. Like, I'm very serious. Like people have to text me and tell me, hey, Kimra, say something funny because you've been so serious for like a week. Like I'm like that person. I'm just very serious. And so I have to allow that to come out of me, allow that playfulness to come out of me, and get that joy, right? That comes from that playfulness. Like, I mean, I can hear my kids laughing and giggling and stuff right now. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are they doing? They must be having so much fun because they sound like they're having a great time. And so how can I participate in that? And it goes back, and that's even healing the inner child by doing that. Like I was doing some inner child work, and I was like, man, when I was a kid, I really loved those little Polly Pockets, where it was like the little thing that opened up and like had that little tiny person in there,
Anything that was little tiny when I was like a kid, I was all over it. I loved
I
it.
loved it. And I was like, all right, that's it. I'm going on eBay and I'm gonna buy one of these Polly Pocket. They're like $180. I was like, oh my God, because like vintage, now. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna buy one. I'm not gonna buy all of them. I'm gonna buy one. And sometimes it's just honoring that playfulness in us, and that can really inspire us to create something else for our business. And like I'm doing a thing inside of my community So I use Discord for my community. And when people are more active, they can get badges. And so I have like all these like funny names for like my badges. Like I just came up with all these like funny names yesterday. And I'm like, how can I make my business more playful? It's like, oh, who wants to play Among Us with me? Like, hey, let's schedule it in on Friday night because we can't go out anywhere because we're in lockdown anyway. Like, let's play some video games, you know? So just what are those things that I can make fun in my business? And that's something that it was hard for me in the beginning. Like I'm not naturally super playful. And so I've had to like incorporate that into my business. And it's the more I incorporate it, the faster things grow, which has been really cool.
Amazing.
Because play is
Amazing.
fun. Like let's be
It
playful, you
is,
know?
and it's also as well how we learn. But I think also as well that you have been very playful, but your playfulness does come out in your seriousness. Because one thing that you've never been shy to do is to experiment. You've always been willing to, like some people are like, this is tried and tested, but you're like,
Mhm.
nah, throw out the playbook. Let's try this. And you're so the playfulness for you, I think, often has been in the experimentation of let's
Mhm.
see if this works,
Yeah.
which I think that innovation is essential for growth in business. Innovation
Mhm.
is essential for growth in business, and so many people are not willing to innovate. So many people
Mhm.
are like, let's do tried and tested and see if we can get exponential growth. No, because tried and tested is going to get tried and tested growth. But if
Yeah.
you're wanting that little magic growth or that exponential growth or that thing that just goes, you have to be willing to throw out the playbook. You have to be
Mhm.
willing to try something and follow that playful curiosity of like, oh, I wonder, like Twitch, for instance, let's
Mhm.
go on there because there's just something that seems, I'm curious, like, will this work? Will this translate here? How will it look? And your willingness to do that, which I think is really great. The whole experiment, in a way, is an exploration of Joanna's playful curiosity
Mhm.
of just going and seeing, you know, can this work? And it's been, I mean, I have literally had the best time. It's been so much fun, and seeing how everybody is growing, and also as well introducing that idea of playful curiosity to them as well, and getting people back into, as children we so naturally experiment, try things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's why we have to have plug socket covers, because
Mhm.
they look at a little thing and think, oh, that looks like it would fit in there. So we have to safety proof our houses for children, but like it doesn't mean that as adults we got a little bit more sense going on, we can maybe have a bit more fun with experimentation because it's not quite so dangerous.
Yeah, especially, because I have 3 kids, so I could totally relate to that. I'm just like, why are you turning on the stove? Like you're 5, like you're gonna burn yourself. If you want to learn to cook, let's try some stuff that doesn't involve heat first, and then we'll move on to other things. Like it's like we got to gradually get there. And it's definitely, I see so much curiosity in them. And I am very naturally curious. Like, I love learning. Like, I'm the person that has all the books and like I take different courses. And like, I'm that person who wants to constantly learn. And learning to me is part of fun. And I actually just said this to a friend yesterday. I was like, learning is fun for me. Like, I love learning. Like, I would rather watch a documentary. When I was in high school, I used to save up like my pennies so I can send out. There was a catalog that had documentaries, and I would save up all my money and send it in the mail to get documentary VHS tapes sent to me because I just was curious about learning all the time. And so that's definitely been a big piece of my business. And what I learn, I teach others. So that's literally what my business is. So I'm like, oh, I learned how to do this. I'm going to teach you how to do it too. Oh, I learned how to do that. I'm going to teach you how to do that
I love
too. And it's been really such a wonderful experience. I've attracted just incredible people into my communities, into my programs. It's just been such a blessing to be able to create a business where I've been able to really be myself. And even though there have been times where it's been scary to be myself, scary in certain ways, especially like I have called out people in the industry who have caused me harm, things like that. There's definitely been some scary points too, but the thing is I always want to be very transparent with my community, let them know like what is actually going on with me, and even let them know, hey, if I'm having like a really down time and things are really rough right now, like it's okay, like I'm a human, like I'm not like, and I mean I've never really been like the super polished, type of person anyway, because I'm just like, hey, I'm a punk rock chick, like whatever. Like who cares, I'm like the one, like it was really funny because someone said to me the other day, they said the reason why people resonate with you so much is you're just you, like it's nothing to do with like, oh my gosh, Kimra has the best of every, like, oh, she's the best teacher, she's the best coach, those sorts of things. She's like, you're amazing at that, but it's just you're just you, you don't care if you have blue hair or tattoos and piercings. Actually, I want a bunch more piercings, but because of COVID, you can't, they like don't, you're not allowed to get
You're
them,
not
like,
allowed.
yeah, there's these ones I really want in my cheeks, like right here. Like I'm like, oh, that'd be so cute. And I'm like, oh, I want this done. And like, and I'm thinking about getting a tattoo on my head right here. So I'm just like, oh man, like I'm getting hardcore if I'm considering tattoos on my face. But my best friend has them, and so I'm like, I don't know, like I think maybe I could get one, like little one. But she has like her face, she's like covered, like her face is so many tattoos. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like sometimes I'm like, you're crazy, but then I'm like, you know what? Like I actually kind of like it. So
I love it.
yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I've taken from just being in your world, and and growing my business as you have grown yours, and being inspired by you, is really that we can do this being ourselves. We don't have to be anyone else. And it brings me into, Oscar Wilde once was quoted as saying, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And it's always been, that quote in itself has been inspirational to me. And I feel like you've lived that very much out loud, that you've been yourself. And and I think, that is because we're in this culture where it's almost a rebellious act to love oneself and to be
Mm-hmm.
approving and accepting of oneself, that we either try and be something that we're not, because it's almost like conditioned into us. And so it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like an act of rebellion to actually be, well, I love and accept all of what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, and that's what's really, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I asked you to be on this podcast, because that's something that's always really inspired me. Just as we wrap up here, Kimra, can you give us one tip that you feel has been, I know we've covered so much juicy stuff here, but one thing that's been really pivotal in you growing a seven-figure business? Like if I could say to you, put you, Johnny, on the spot, just one thing, what would you give us?
Always go back to your values. If something feels off, go back to your values. Every email you write should include your values in it. Every single Instagram post you make should include your values in it. And I don't say should very often because
Mhm.
I don't think there are very many shoulds in business.
Yeah.
But you should have your values as your core focus in your business, because if it isn't, what ends up happening is there's such a huge misalignment that you end up crashing and burning, you end up failing. You might succeed for a little while, but you end up failing in the long haul. Your relationships begin to fail. The connections you feel with your community ends up just being a complete disconnect. And so keep that focus on your values. It's my only major should in business is focus on those values all the time.
I love that. And I mean, it's something that I recently just covered in an Infinite Possibilities masterclass, that if you're not connected to you first, then, then there is a disconnect. And ultimately, that is just going to connect you to void energy. And ultimately, that's just going to connect you to what I call fuck my life vibes later
Yep.
down the road. If it's not today, it will be later down the road. But when you are connected to your values, you're connected to what's really important to you, then you're being true to yourself. When you're being true to yourself, everything else flows. And so I love how succinctly you put that together, that connecting to your values is so important. I love that. And so thank you so, so much for joining us. Please tell everyone where they can find you on the interwebs, and we'll pop it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so the best place to find me is my website, which is kimraluna.com, and that's KIMRALUNA.com. And Instagram is a really great place to hit me up. It's the same name. I also have an awesome podcast called the Riot Doll Podcast, where I talk about all the topics that I'm interested in. So I decided to make a podcast that was about all the things, and it's really cool. I have some really incredible guests there. And then you can also follow me on Twitch, which is Riot Doll Podcast as well. And that's where I host a lot of business master classes. And you can come and ask me any questions you want about business or about spirituality, sexuality, all the things there.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.